and I welcome a qualifying request from a DMPS employee, elected official, or a petition from the public to help us do just that. We are here today to set the record straight after 3 state senators sent a letter with a request. They either knew that that request was something I couldn't fulfill legally and knew they were inviting me to break the law, or they were just totally ignorant of the law and really focused on politics rather than getting things right. I want to emphasize that's not the approach of every legislator. I've had great conversations over the years with legislators in both parties who, when they have a local concern, call me. They email me. They walk into the office. They ask me questions. And we help them understand who can make requests of what. The truth is that the state auditor only has the legal authority to do an audit of a local entity when someone local makes the request. It has to be from an elected official of that entity, an employee of that entity, or a petition with 100 signatures on it from people who live in the jurisdiction of that entity. That's a good law because it prevents politicians who don't really care about the issues locally from tying up taxpayer resources with requests for things that they don't really care about. I want to emphasize this. This is what legislators can request. They can request reviews of issues of spending by a state department with money from a state department. That's it. You'll notice that none of them requested us to review what was going on with the Iowa Educational Examiners, who actually approved a license for Ian Roberts to teach. That might be partisan politics. All 3 of these senators voted for the bill that makes it harder for this office to conduct audits. This bill creates 8 different categories of documents that the auditor's office is now no longer supposed to have access to. All 3 of them voted for it. I wonder if any of them now wish that they hadn't. They are all in the state Senate. That bill was rammed through the state Senate in 10 hours before some people even had a chance to read it. Maybe if politics hadn't gotten in the way and we could have had a chance to talk to them about it, they would have thought differently like some of their colleagues did in the Iowa House. That's for them to answer for. The folks who passed that bill, we know why they did it. They did it because in our first term, with a senior leadership team of Democrats, Independents, and Republicans, including people who had contributed to my opponent's campaign, we uncovered a record amount of misspent money. We didn't not look at something just because powerful people didn't want us to look at it. They turned around and passed this bill to hide misspent money so that you wouldn't know and they couldn't be held accountable. I also want to emphasize, we just saw a lawsuit this weekend in a different public school district alleging abuse by a teacher of a student, and a suit saying that the leaders of that school district were aware of what happened. Are they calling for that school district to be taken over? Or are they calling for that school district to have more oversight? I haven't heard a peep. That might be partisan politics. All 3 of these senators also voted for the private school vouchers bill that opens the door for literally hundreds of millions of dollars in waste, fraud, and abuse because there is no oversight. They voted for a bill that doesn't allow audits of private schools taking public dollars. Taxpayers will have no idea how these funds are being used. And to be clear, all of the money is actually required to be spent as tuition, spent for tuition, once it's in the hands of the private school, as paid as tuition. There's only one thing on God's green earth that can't be done with it. They can't give a rebate to parents. So if they want to buy big screen TVs, they can do that. If they want to go to Florida in January on taxpayers' dime, private schools in the state of Iowa right now can do that. So who's really serious here about responsibility of tax dollars and oversight? It's just honestly ironic, a little funny, to hear the same folks who voted to gut the auditor's office, who voted to give away hundreds of millions of dollars in taxpayer money, to private schools with no rules and no audits now complain that the office that they handcuffed is having a hard time doing an audit, when the truth is what they were inviting us to do wasn't an audit, it was inviting us to violate the law. The law is clear. If they want us to look at something at the state level, they can invite us to do that. I wonder if they don't want us to look at anything at the state level. I wonder if that's partisan politics. I think we know the answer to that. It's the difference between partisan politics and public service. Our office is ready to receive a qualifying request from an elected official of the school district, from an employee of the school district, from a petition from 100 people who live within the school district boundaries, and if we do that, we will conduct a review, because we do think that there are important questions that need answering. But that's about accountability, and that's about truth-seeking. It's not about politics. Happy to take questions.
To be clear, you have not, to date, received a request, a qualifying request for an audit of Des Moines Public Schools?
Unless it came in close to when I was standing here. We have not yet.
And given findings that show Ian Roberts did recommend a consulting firm that he has worked with in the past for business at Des Moines Public Schools, and even on one occasion hired that consulting firm for business, would you recommend, or have you spoken with local officials about doing an audit of Des Moines Public Schools?
I've explained to a couple folks at DMPS what the law is and how it works. After reading those reports, we are here today to make sure that every DMPS employee and people who are citizens who live in the DMPS jurisdiction, if they want to do a petition, are all aware of how this works. Because after reading those reports, yeah, we have concerns. We are already conducting 2 other reviews of spending by superintendents and other districts in the state. But again, the law says we can't do this until we have a qualifying request. Just because the word auditor is in the name doesn't mean that we can jump out and audit any taxpayer, for example. We follow the law first. We want to know the facts, but we want to make sure that we're doing things correctly.
How do you suggest the school board and school district, if they're already suing the search firm, what other avenues of accountability do you think they, and then also just Des Moines taxpayers, should be seeking aside from the audit that you mentioned?
I think the suit makes sense. Obviously, there was a failure in background check here, and figuring out who that is and who should be held accountable for it is going to be in the language of that contract, most likely. But we're standing up here today to say, hey, we're here. This is our job. We will do our job. We just have to have that request from any employee. And I want to emphasize it has to be a request in writing. I will also emphasize that we would never, ever disclose to anyone who it is that makes a request. We wouldn't even say whether it came from a member of the school board or that it came from an employee. We just don't do that. And the reason is we know what that's like. We want people who are whistleblowers, who want accountability, who want transparency, to know that they can make that request without worrying that someone else is going to find out that they're the ones that made it and be cross with them about it or come after them for some reason. We've had situations too where, a petition gets filed, and we've had someone come in and say, well, I want the names of the people on that petition. We don't disclose that. We don't believe it's a public record. We don't believe that disclosing the names on the petition serves any real good. It's just a way for people to bully someone who asks for transparency.
If you were to audit the Board of Educational Examiners, would the review focus on the contract with the firm that conducts the background checks, or what other questions might you have?
Whatever we do in this situation, if receiving a qualifying request, is going to depend upon what the specific facts are. If the Board of Educational Examiners also farmed out that background check, then we'd want to know to whom and on what terms. Is that the case? Are you telling me that that's the case today?
There is an indication that they used a private firm.
Okay. That would surprise me a little bit. We've got, sure. That surprised me a little bit. We've got DMPS here. They do background checks all the time. But yeah, we'd be interested in knowing that too. We haven't had a request for us to dig into that. we'll see where that goes.
As a Des Moines Public School parent, do you plan to vote for that bond initiative, $265 million?
You know, I think that the difference between these two issues is one is about what has happened and one is about what will happen. I do plan to vote for it. I think that we need to make sure that we are supporting the kids in the school district here. And the truth is, with declining enrollment, funding that has been stagnant despite skyrocketing inflation under presidents of two different administrations, two different parties, Iowa public schools are struggling. And I think that it's a smart thing for us to make an investment in, particularly knowing that we should be having accountability for what has happened in this situation.
Can you clarify a little bit about if you get a request initiated by an elected, so could this be like city council?
No,
State rep?
no.
What qualifies?
So a city official can make a request to audit the city that they represent. A county elected official can make a request for us to audit the county that they're elected from. If a person, for example, is a resident of a county, but they're not, let's say somebody from Ankeny says, hey, you should audit the city of Des Moines. We get a petition from people in Ankeny to audit Des Moines. It's got to be within the entity, always within the entity.
So what would
What about like an elected, didn't you say an elected can?
So a school board member can make a request. A city official, a city council member can make a request for that city. A county elected official, a county supervisor can make a request for the county that they are elected to represent.
So like a legislator cannot, correct?
A legislator can, it's the same rules.
Yeah.
The legislator can make a request for the review of funds of federal funds by a state department and examine if the spending by the department is consistent. And so because they're elected to represent the state of Iowa, right, from their district, they can make a request for that piece of state government.
So what would need to happen, in order for a state elected official to, be able to do this for the Des Moines School Board? Would something need to change in law, and how would that be done?
Something would need to change in law, but again, as I said earlier, I don't think that that's a good idea. We have avenues that are appropriate and that work, right? Anyone who's a DMPS employee right now can send an email to info@aos.iowa.gov from their personal email, show us that they're an employee of Des Moines Public Schools, and that is enough for us to initiate an audit. Now, I want to emphasize too, it sure helps when you tell us everything that you want us to look at. Our office has 100 roughly people in it at any given time. They are hardworking, but there is a crisis in numbers in the nation for auditors and accountants right now. We are overworked, and the more folks can point us specifically to what they think that we should be looking at, the better.
What would an audit of DMPS look like? What would you be able to look at? And are you confident that you would be able to get it? What's that issue?
So that's actually a good point, because every school district in the state of Iowa is actually, I have to correct myself here. Every public school district in the state of Iowa, every single year, is audited. We are not able to audit private schools, even if they get public money. But what it looks like, if we come in and we do a special investigation, we are not redoing the entire last year's audit. Some of the terminology you may see as re-audit. It's a re-audit in the sense, but really it's more of a special review, right? A special investigation. We're looking specifically where people have pointed us, but as always, although many people in state government would have it otherwise, the auditor needs to set the terms of what they look at, right? The scope of what they're looking at has to be defined by the auditor. Otherwise, the audit isn't very good. And so if somebody comes in, whether it's a state legislator requesting the review of state funds or it's a city council person requesting the review of city funds, they can tell us where they want to look, but in the course of looking there, if we see something that makes us think, boy, we better look somewhere else, or if we just decide, this is a related issue, maybe we should look over here, we have to be able to do that. Otherwise, there's no real reliability in the work.
The superintendent is authorized to make payments under a certain amount without board approval, right? That is part of district policy.
Yeah.
Can you tell us what would concern you about those payments? What questions, you said some of these reports have raised questions for
Sure.
you. Can you
Well,
tell us?
to your earlier point, Hannah, I think we've seen this public report, right, of the fact that he tried to have emergency approval of a contract to a firm that he was tied to. That right there makes any auditor go, boy, we better look at every piece of that spending.
So you're concerned about that conflict of interest?
Absolutely.
in spending?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You said that you can't say who makes the request for an audit. Would you be able to tell the public if you received such a request or if you were beginning an audit?
Yes. We can let people know when we have a request that we are going to do something. We wouldn't disclose any specificity about what form the request came in. Usually if it's a petition, we'll say we have a petition, because when petition reports come out, it actually comes out as answering to a petition, if that makes sense. So their petition may have 10 points on it, and we typically go through and answer each bullet point. But beyond saying petition versus a qualifying request, we wouldn't get any more specific.
If you were to get a request from a member of the school board, a resident of the Des Moines School District, or someone else, how quickly could a review be accomplished?
Totally depends. This is one of those things where you go where the audit or the investigation leads you. At many points in my career as both an auditor and a prosecutor, you could look at a case and think, oh, well, we're almost done. And then all of a sudden somebody calls you and you have much more work to do. The easiest example of this is the lottery investigation, right? I mean, the defendant, Eddie Tipton, demanded speedy trial, so we had to get ready to take him to trial on this one Iowa ticket. And that's all we knew about because we had to get ready to go to trial. We didn't have time to dig in all over the country. And then it was in between trial and his sentencing that we get a call from a guy down in Texas. And then all of a sudden, an entire new investigation results that leads to all kinds of things and all kinds of quantities of crime and proof of crime that we didn't have access to prior. That sort of thing happens all the time. You can go into someone and you think, okay, great, I've got 2 interviews lined up today. We're just going to wrap this thing up. But then somebody tells you something that is new. The problem with giving people a time frame is once you've given them a time frame, the integrity of your prediction of the time frame is competing with the integrity of the report. You don't want to put yourself in that situation because you want to make sure that you're focused on the integrity of the report. Sometimes it's 8 months, sometimes it's 18 months. All right. Again, I want to just emphasize, right? I mean, what we're here to say is, as state auditor, I think that more review at Des Moines Public Schools around Ian Roberts' work is important, and we welcome a qualifying request from a DMPS employee, a school board member, or a petition from the public to do that work. Thanks.